Incredible twist, Vin Diesel unexpectedly steps in to transform Humiliation of 82-year-old woman. The familiar jingle of the door sent chills of nostalgia through Clara Thompson as she stepped into the Oak Leaf Cafe. The rich scent of roasted coffee wrapped around her like a warm shawl, a stark contrast to the crisp autumn air that gripped the outside world. Clara's heart fluttered at the thought of her favorite latte, one that tasted of sweet memories and whispered laughter, a small sanctuary nestled in a quaint Midwestern town. Today, however, an unseen storm brewed without warning. As Clara settled into her usual seat by the window, her hands trembling slightly with excitement, her gaze fell upon a sharply dressed businessman across the room. He was laughing, arrogantly, as he directed mocking remarks toward her. "What was that? Did you forget your coffee order, Grandma?" He guffawed, his voice rising above the cozy chatter. Heat crept to Clara's cheeks, his jovial cruelty ignited a spark of humiliation that cut deeper than any blade. Was this how her life's work, dedicated to nurturing young minds, mattered to the world now? Clara paused, her breath hitching as she reflected on the past, on the students who had blossomed under her guidance. Now, a stranger's derision robbed her of that legacy, leaving behind an ache that clawed at her dignity. She fumbled with her coffee mug, the once comforting weight now a reminder of her frailty. What was she but a forgotten relic in a fast-paced society, unseen behind the layers of age and memory? The things she once championed, respect, kindness, tangled into knots of despair inside her mind. Across the room, her grandson James clenched his fists, the heat of anger coursing through him at the sight of Clara's hurt. He watched, torn between the swirl of his own troubled dreams as a struggling artist and the need to protect the woman who had shaped his values. Memories of sitting of her lap, listening to stories of resilient figures, clashed against the shame of feeling powerless to shield her now. His internal battle echoed loudly, mixing his dreams of a brighter future with the stark reality of familial loyalty. Wouldn't he defend her? Shouldn't he? Before he could decide, an unexpected figure entered the fray. Vin Diesel, a ghost of a movie star, sat nearby, his attention caught by the cruel laughter. Clara, among all the patrons, captivated his heart. Why was this woman, so dignified and poised, subjected to such mockery? He approached her table with a light spirit, his welcoming smile juxtaposed against the shamefulness of the situation. As their eyes met, something fragile shifted in the air, a whispered understanding. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue with newfound resolve. Clara shared snippets of her past, igniting Vin's admiration for her resilience. Ideas flowed between them like an unspoken treaty against the mocker. Meanwhile, James felt a swell of hope, intermingled with a persistent unease. Was it too late? When the businessman returned, self-important laughter echoing against the cafe's warmth, Clara's heart raced. The moment of reckoning loomed, threads of tension unspooling, leaving uncertainty hanging in the air. Would she reclaim her dignity, or would the harsh laughter of one man drown out her lifetime of strength? As they prepared to confront this emotional tide, the stakes reached boiling point. A tempest of anger, protection, and the longing for respect hung palpably, awaiting its resolution. Clara held her breath as the businessman sauntered back into the cafe with an air of triumphant confidence. Vin's presence next to her felt like a cocoon, both reassuring and electric. Clara's grip tightened on her coffee mug, her knuckles white as she braced herself for what lay ahead. Flashes of 1,000 classroom moments flooded her mind, where she empowered her students to challenge the status quo, to stand tall against adversity. Why couldn't she channel that same strength now? Vin's voice broke through her reverie, a soft yet firm tone as he leaned closer. "Clara, remember, you have a story worth telling. Don't let anyone drown that truth out." With those words, something inside her began to shift. The humiliating whispers faded into a distant echo, replaced by the steely resolve forming in her heart. Taking a deep breath, Clara straightened her spine. As the businessman approached, the amused gleam in his eye turned to confusion when he saw Clara's newfound composure. "I'm sorry, did I interrupt something?" he sneered, not anticipating that his mockery would no longer find its mark. "No, you didn't," Clara responded, her voice clear and steady. "But it seems you've misread what a grandma is capable of." James, catching the spark of courage igniting within his grandmother, felt his tension melt slightly. The specter of self-doubt lurking behind Clara began to flicker, fading before the brightness of her reclaimed spirit. The businessman scoffed at her defiance, but Clara pressed on. "I've spent my life championing kindness and respect. You think your laughter defines my worth? Let me remind you I'm the author of my own narrative." Each word radiated confidence, bolstering her stature not just in the cafe but within the heart of the woman she once thought had faded among the shadows of age. Surprise edged across Vin's face, and Clara caught a glimmer of admiration in his eyes as James inhaled sharply, astonished to witness this transformation. She was not merely a bystander in her own story, she was stepping into the role she once carved for herself, a figure who inspired, guided, and uplifted. But as the businessman faltered, the tension shifted. Would he lash out or back down? James interjected, his voice rising with an unexpected clarity. "Making fun of my grandmother won't elevate you. It only shows how weak you are." His protective instincts surged, and in that moment, he recognized the mirror reflecting Clara's courage back through him. This was a shared moment of growth, a recognition that they could rise as one against those who sought to belittle them. As his words hung in the air, the businessman's bravado started waning, discomfort etched across his features. Would he retreat from their newfound unity, or lash out in one final desperate attempt to reassert his dominance? Clara's eyes darted to Vin, seeking silent reassurance. An unspoken alliance formed between them, a shared conviction that they would not allow disrespect to flourish. The cafe was tinged with palpable anticipation, the air thick with vulnerability and challenge. Clara, emboldened by the embers of her self-worth, prepared to engage further. She could feel the critical moments of potential change swirling around them like a storm, and then, with everything hanging delicately in balance, the businessman's face contorted in what could either be just anger or a desperate grasp for power. He took a step forward, mouth opening as if to unleash another wave of ridicule. But before he could, Clara managed a confident smile, ready to reinforce her stand. In this poignant moment, she felt everything she cherished draw upon her heart: resilience, respect, and the insistence to reclaim her identity. But would this courage be enough to silence the man before her, or was there deeper turbulence to endure? There would be no turning back. As the tension thickened, Clara whispered to herself, "I will no longer be silent," and faced her opponent, knowing that her next words could alter the trajectory of the confrontation for herself, for James, and for anyone withdrawn from the world by the harsh hand of disdain. What would the outcome reveal about the depths of her strength? Clara felt the heat of the moment settling around her. The businessman, stuck between his arrogance and burgeoning uncertainty, looked ready to lash out or perhaps squirm his way out of the confrontation altogether. With a single step, he broke the fragile silence, but this time Clara was prepared. She sensed the weight of expectations upon her, but rather than folding under it, she embraced it. "What's the matter?" she asked, her voice steady yet tinged with curiosity. "Did you think I wouldn't stand up for myself? How many people have you belittled just to feel important?" Clara's heart raced, not from fear but from a newfound power surging within her. Each questioning glance from her audience, Vin, James, and even the curious patrons sipping lattes in the cafe fueled her courage. He faltered, caught off guard by her tenacity. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" His bravado was slipping, and Clara could see the vulnerability lurking beneath his bravado. An undeniable shift occurred. She had turned the tables. "Yes," Clara said confidently, "I do. Strength isn't confined to age or a title. Strength lies in the stories we tell ourselves and the voices we choose to amplify." She glanced at James, who was looking at her with awe, and then back at Vin, who nodded in encouragement. His validation anchored her, allowing her to continue drawing on the well of conviction she had rediscovered. This wasn't just a battle against a man's arrogance, it was a reclamation of her identity as a teacher, a mother, and now a fierce grandmother. There was nothing more powerful than owning one's narrative, and she had every intention of doing just that. I've spent decades teaching my students to stand up for what's right, to nurture their talents, and to reject the harsh impositions of those like you. The businessman blinked, and for a moment, uncertainty played across his features, revealing cracks in his armor. Clara pressed on. Your laughter doesn't intimidate, it exposes your own weaknesses. Should I feel sorry for you? His jaw tightened, frustration peeking through his facade. But Clara saw it differently. No longer was he a tyrant in her eyes, he was merely a man struggling to wield power in a way that was slipping from his grasp. It wasn't solely about victory for her, but about understanding the layers of human conflict that everyone battled their own insecurities. The moment stretched on, filled with steady breaths and murmurs from onlookers. Clara combated the impulse to lower her eyes. Instead, she maintained unwavering eye contact, her spirit fortifying her resolve. Then, out of nowhere, Vin interjected, his voice a powerful but soothing presence. What Clara is saying resonates beyond this cafe. It speaks to all of us who faced ridicule. Your mockery can never overshadow our will to rise. He stood beside her, a partner in this encounter, solidifying their front. The businessman, now exposed and aware that the confrontation had shifted from mere laughter to a lesson in respect and dignity, hesitated. You two are just a couple of dreamers, he scoffed, but something in his tone lacked conviction. No, we're not dreamers, Clara replied, her voice unwavering. We're realists who have faced daily challenges and emerged stronger. We are the authors of our lives, and your narrative ends here. You can either choose to step back or continue to make a fool of yourself. The air thickened with electricity as everyone present absorbed her vehemence. There was an unsettling vulnerability in the businessman's stance, his bravado slowly crumbling under the weight of self-awareness, and just as Clara anticipated a retreat, she sensed something deeper rising within her as she maintained her gaze. Perhaps the confrontation was not just about silencing him, it was also about discovering her own depth and potential. She could feel the flickering flame of determination that had been dormant for too long threatening to blaze anew. The businessman gathered himself, still stewing with indignation. But Clara had gained something priceless, momentum. A glimpse of empowerment lit her path forward. She had stepped from the confines of invisibility into the light of affirmation, not just for herself but for all who had been dismissed. With one final glance at Vin and James, their expressions unwaveringly steadfast, she moved to take it a step further. When you leave here today, think about what words you feed your own inner voice. Because only then will you truly understand the impact we can have when we choose love and respect over mockery. The businessman opened his mouth, but already the hubbub of the cafe began drowning him out. The crowd stirred into a quiet frenzy of admiration. She had not just transformed the confrontation, she had laid the groundwork for a personal revolution, but could she reclaim her narrative against all the societal constructs that had tried to pity her? What new challenges awaited her now, as the embers of her courage burned brightly? Just as she pondered these transformative moments, fate would soon uncover a deeper calling. Clara stepped away from the confrontation, her heart still pounding with the electric adrenaline of exerting her voice. The cafe buzzed around her, a symphony of murmurs and whispers, but amidst the noise, a loud clarity settled in her mind. Empowerment had ignited a latent part of her, one that had been dimmed by doubt and societal expectations. She felt the warmth of validation wrapped around her like a protective shield. Are you okay? Vin asked softly, his eyes bright with admiration. Clara nodded, though she was still grappling with the enormity of what had just transpired. James, too, offered a supportive smile, but Clara could sense something stirring beyond mere appreciation. It was a yearning for change, a desire to harness this moment into something bigger than herself. Let us get out of here, Vin suggested, glancing over at the now silent businessman who had retreated to a corner, his bravado deflating by the minute. The cafe felt both liberating and confining, an odd juxtaposition that mirrored Clara's own transformation. She needed space to think, to strategize the next step in her growth. As they walked to her car, Clara could hardly contain the torrent of thoughts racing through her mind. How could she leverage this newfound conviction? How could she advocate for others who might still feel small in the shadows of mockery and derision? Clara, what you did back there was incredible. But I can't help but wonder, what's next for you? Vin's question pierced through her whirlwind of contemplation, forcing her to confront the reality of her momentous leap. I want to teach again, she finally admitted, her voice steady but layered with hope. Not just in classrooms, but on a broader scale. I want to empower people to reclaim their narratives, just like I did today. James chimed in, his enthusiasm palpable. That sounds amazing. You could start a blog, or even host workshops. There are plenty of people out there who could use your wisdom and experiences. Clara nodded, considering the implications of their suggestions. A blog seemed like a starting point, her platform to share stories, insights, and strategies for overcoming negativity. The thought electrified her. After so many years watching others' voices overshadow her own, finally, she had the tools to amplify her presence, but then doubt crept in. What if her endeavors were met with the same ridicule that had haunted her in the past? What if her age became a barrier? Clara wrestled with these insecurities, recalling the businessman's laughter that had echoed just moments before. Vin must have sensed her hesitation. You've faced ridicule and you've conquered it, Clara. Those experiences could be your greatest asset. You can show people that age doesn't define one's capabilities. You have the strength to break barriers. His words resonated, igniting another flash of determination. Clara straightened, the fire within her crackling anew. She envisioned not just writing a blog or conducting workshops, but creating a community united in the celebration of self-advocacy and respect. Could she be that catalyst? As the three of them stood by the car, she felt the weight of the moment. A new era of her life was dawning, but it required commitment, effort, and a willingness to confront her fears head-on. I won't just be speaking for myself, she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. I will be a voice for everyone who has been silenced. With this revelation, her path seemed clearer, but it also felt daunting. What kind of commitments would this demand? Would she have to confront dissenters again, and how would she handle them? The reality of her aspirations mingled with an anxious exhilaration looming over her. Just as the weight of potential next steps settled within her, Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her back to the present. It was a notification from her old teaching community's group chat, an invitation to speak at a panel discussion on education reforms and empowerment. Clara took a deep breath. Was this the opening she needed to announce her return to teaching in an unconventional, impactful way? Could this be the first stepping stone toward her vision of empowerment? Excitement and trepidation intertwined as she read through the details. With a glance shared between Vin and James, the thrill of what lay ahead ignited new enthusiasm. Clara felt propelled toward a future filled with both promise and uncertainty. The moment of truth was approaching where she would fully embrace who she was meant to be, but just as Clara began to formulate her ideas for the panel, a nagging thought stuck in her mind: would she be willing to challenge the status quo once again, fully aware of the potential backlash? As excitement coalesced with doubt, she knew that her journey had only just begun. The time had come to face the very barriers she sought to dismantle, and the echoes of her courageous confrontation danced teasingly in the background, urging her forward into the unknown. Clara sat in her living room, an unfinished mug of coffee abandoned on the table beside her. The weight of the panel invitation rested heavily in her thoughts. She had always envisioned teaching as a foundation built on interaction and connection, not merely as a one-way street. But this panel called for a different approach, one that demanded her to be not just a participant, but a beacon of change. The silence of the room amplified her inner turmoil. What would she even say? The hours trickled by as her mind oscillated between bold ideas and crippling self-doubt. Each simple thought of speaking her truth felt like a tightrope act, balancing potential empowerment against the fear of public scrutiny. Her fingers tapped the keys on her laptop, an attempt to organize her thoughts, but her concentration continually shattered by the echo of that businessman's laughter. His derision had lingered long after he left the cafe, tormenting her with whispers that sought to undermine her newfound courage. What if he was right? What if this was fantasy, and she would crash back down, splintering under public ridicule once more? Yet, beneath the niggling worries, another realization was surfacing: she couldn't allow that laughter to define her narrative. Clara quickly jotted down empowerment through education as her overarching theme, and under it, a series of bullet points began to take shape. Ideas flowed like an unquenched river: her own experiences, the hurdles of being dismissed, and how vulnerability became her strength. The thrill of crafting her message suffused her thoughts with possibility. Clara was tapping into something deeper, a reservoir of ideas she had long neglected. The fragments of her past were now coloring her enthusiasm, and each penned word surged with rhythm, forming a cohesive narrative that was simultaneously frightening and liberating. She wrote late into the night. The process was cathartic, transforming her anxieties into a structured, compelling narrative. The next step loomed closer and felt more real. But Clara's spirit would rise or falter under the scrutiny of the audience. Would they find her as foolish as that businessman had? As the clock ticked, her own sense of urgency blossomed. Presenting herself felt imminent. That in the middle of the night, an unexpected inspiration fired her up. She remembered an interview with a local artist who had faced backlash, turning raw criticism into community art initiatives. What if she, too, transformed her voice into a catalyst for change? The notion sent a wave of vibrancy coursing through her bloodstream. She could channel her own journey to create initiatives that inspired others, workshops where people could learn to express their narratives in ways that felt authentic to them. Maybe she could invite others to share their stories alongside hers. An idea blossomed for a series of discussions, raw, honest, and liberating. Each participant would publicly reclaim their narrative in a space that fostered respect and encouragement. This was not just Clara's path but a universal avenue for others to discover their voices. However, as excitement surged, another voice quivered within her. Clara knew this vision wouldn't come without its adversities. The thought of being back in the public eye started to amplify her worries, the past looming like a shadow, whispering doubts. Would she have the strength to stand against not only skepticism but potential hostility? This moment began requiring decisions. Every strategy she planned came layered with risks. Would she take the plunge into this creative vulnerably? Or would she retreat back into the safety of her quiet life, foregoing the chance to connect deeply with others? The clock's ticking became a relentless reminder that time waits for no one. With the panel only days away, she had to confront not only the stakes involved but the very essence of what this opportunity represented. Her fears now confronted her more brutally. Would she be bold enough to step into the light, ready to face whatever might come next? As she prepared her notes, she made a resolution. Clara would not retreat. This could be the moment that defined her trajectory, a point where she would choose to stand firm, unyielding against the voices that sought to silence her. Yet, no sooner had she solidified her resolve than her phone buzzed again, a message from Vin. Hey. Just heard about the format of the panel. I think you'll be surprised at who else might be invited. A real game changer. A frown creased her brow as she read the words. Who could it possibly be? With the taste of uncertainty on her tongue, the looming question formed in her mind: was the game truly changing, or simply shifting further into the unknown? Clara stared at the screen, a whirl of anticipation and dread gripping her. The answer felt tantalizingly close, yet out of reach. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she set her phone down, the flickering screen still echoing Vin's words in her mind. The game changer could mean so many things, but uncertainty roared louder than her curiosity. What kind of transformation would someone like Vin bring to the panel? A wave of unease washed over her. She quickly dismissed the thought. She didn't have the luxury to dwell on someone else's potential impact. She focused instead on her own presentation, pulling her notes back into reach, feeling the weight of the situation settle into her shoulders. She was at a crossroads: honor her aspirations or shrink back, defeated by the shadows of her insecurities. Empowerment through education gleamed brightly on her poorly lit desk. It had become a mantra, her guiding light. With determination igniting in her chest, she sketched out the structure of her talk, weaving in personal anecdotes and lessons learned. Possibilities cascaded through her mind. What if she reframed her fears as strengths? The past was written, but what she chose to do with it still remained unwritten, an open page inviting her to fill it with vibrant experiences. She envisioned standing before the audience, gathering all the courage she could muster. Each word would carry the weight of her journey, the laughter that had haunted her, the nights spent wrestling with her self-worth, and the fragile yet potent realization that her vulnerability was not a weakness but a source of strength. It was time to share not just her story, but the stories of those who felt unheard. Clara's eyes flicked to the clock. Each tick resonated in her mind, amplifying the urgency of her preparations. She could feel the potential power of her narrative. It slipped through her fingers, exciting and terrifying all at once. Yet the nagging doubts returned with a vengeance, heavy and unrelenting. What if you're ridiculed? What if they laugh at you again? Pushing them aside, she made a decision. The panel wouldn't just be her moment, it could ignite a movement, inviting others to reclaim their narratives just as she was attempting to do. This realization shifted her perspective. She began drafting workshop ideas, encompassing the themes of each narrative exchange she hoped to host. The spark turned into a raging fire. She would create spaces where people would feel safe enough to risk sharing their truths. Then, amid her fervor, she recalled the laughs that haunted her from that day in the cafe. A knot twisted in her stomach as she wrestled with her decision. Could she withstand the judgment from a space she had constructed to support growth? Fear and determination warred within her, each rallying for supremacy in her mind. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her thoughts away from the internal conflict. Another text from Vin. Hey. There's a focus group happening later today. About panel topics. You could get insight on how to captivate them. Clara's heart raced. This could be an opportunity to refine her message, gather feedback before it was thrust into the fire. But what if that focus group included people who saw her as less than? What if they echoed the businessman's laughter? Time was running short, and the possibilities were multiplying, danger and excitement mingling in the air. If she entered this focus group, would she be able to stand firm and pivot toward the direction she wanted, or would the whispers of doubt grow louder? With the stakes rising, she found her breath deepening. This was a moment that demanded bold action, a step toward vulnerability wrapped in its most formidable guise. Clara resolved to seize the opportunity. After all, the real journey was entwined with discovering her strength amid the storm. What awaited her in that focus group could shift everything, trust swinging precariously on the edge of her choices. Clara exhaled slowly, each breath calibrating her resolve for what lay ahead, bracing herself for whatever conflict awaited. She had come this far, she wouldn't turn back now. As she considered the path she had chosen, another question began to gnaw at her. What if Vin's game changer was a formidable adversary rather than an ally, poised to challenge her even further? Clara felt the pulse of anxiety quicken, unaware of how profoundly this twist would impact her journey. Clara stepped into the focus group room, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a warning bell. The environment felt charged, each participant a potential ally or adversary. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the motivation that had brought her here, empowering others through shared knowledge and storytelling. The table was lined with faces, some familiar from the network, and others turned strangers. Most were eager, a few skeptical. Vin stood at the front, his casual confidence cloaked in a slight smirk, a reminder of the shadows she sought to evade. He welcomed everyone with a glib remark that hinted at his charisma, but Clara couldn't shake the disquiet that settled within her. She stole a glance at his notes, hoping to catch a glimpse of his thoughts. Perhaps he, too, was grappling with the weight of words. As the conversation turned to individual panel presentations, Clara's throat tightened. Ideas ricocheted around the room, spirited discussions flaring and cooling with equal speed. Yet every constructive sentiment ignited a whisper of fear, a cacophony of those age-old doubts. Would she be able to infuse her authenticity into her message amidst such diverse expectations? When it was her turn to speak, she felt a jolt of adrenaline surge through her. Her prepared lines raced to the forefront of her mind, yet she hesitated. What if her perspective clashed with those of the group? She took a steadying breath, channeling her resolve. My presentation is about reclaiming narratives, she started, the words flowing with an unexpected clarity. It's about illuminating the strength within vulnerability. Murmurs filled the room. Some nodding heads encouraged her, while others remained impassive. Then, Vin leaned in, his gaze calculating. Interesting angle, but how do you plan to address the audience's potential resistance? You can't expect everyone to assuage their skepticism. A knot twisted at the pit of her stomach. I aim to create a space where experiences feel safe enough to be voiced. I want to invite them into the conversation. Invite them, sure, he continued, leaning back with a smirk that felt infuriating yet compelling. But what if you create an echo chamber instead? You need to confront those who believe sharing is counterproductive. Those words thudded against her mind. Confrontation. She had been so focused on consensus, on uniting voices poising for validation, that she hadn't truly prepared to challenge the resistance. The truth landed hard. Was she prepared to meet criticism with strength? Clara took another breath, feeling the heat rise within her. Confrontation is necessary, yes. But it must be constructive. Perhaps rather than fight rejection, we can ask why it exists in the first place. As she spoke, Clara's confidence began to solidify. With each word, she could feel the pulse of the room shift. Eyes were locked onto her, and unfamiliar faces seemed more curious than disdainful. For a moment, she existed solely in the momentum of her thoughts, unraveling the complex fabric of doubt into threads of clarity. The group began to engage, ideas sparking dialogue that ebbed from agreement to debate. Clara felt invigorated, the emotion of sharing brimming. Yet amidst the back and forth, she caught Vin's expression shift from amused scrutiny to reflective intensity. Was he considering her perspective or recalibrating to dominate? The question rattled her. When the session ended, Clara felt both exhilarated and unsettled. She had spoken her truth, that was a victory in itself. But the undercurrent of interaction with Vin loomed over her. What would happen when their paths crossed again? Would he try to dismiss her work, reclaiming power where she had stepped in? As she gathered her materials, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of one final challenge awaiting her in their next encounter. She was at a pivotal juncture, navigating a complex maze that intertwined ambition, fear, and the fierce need to be heard. Would she rise to face the possible oncoming tempest engineered by Vin's undeniable influence? Or would she fall into quiet compliance, allowing herself to be swayed once more? A tightness coiled in her chest as she exited the room, uncertainty stretching across the chapter of her journey she had yet to begin writing. Clara awoke the next morning with the remnants of yesterday's tension still swirling in her mind. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, silently replaying the focus group, her thoughts interspersed with uncertainty about her future encounters with Vin. His challenges had unearthed something deeper within her, a fierce need to dismantle the narrative of meekness she had carried for so long. The sun broke through her window, casting a warm glow on her journal. Driven by a sudden urge, she sprang from her sheets and grabbed the notebook, flicking through pages filled with her musings, sketches, and reflections on her identity. Scribbled in the corner of one page was a quote she had taken to heart: "Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will." Clara noted her realizations from yesterday's session, how she had managed to engage despite her apprehension, transforming a fear-inducing situation into a platform for meaningful dialogue. Could there be power in this vulnerability? With each thought, she sensed her resolve hardening. She reached for a pen and began to draft her strategy. Today's plans involved gathering feedback from others who had presented, seeking insights to refine her own concepts. Perhaps by connecting with these individuals, she could identify collective strengths and weaknesses that echoed the broader narrative she wished to reshape. The idea electrified her. This was not only a chance for growth but also an opportunity to build alliances. After a brisk breakfast and a few strategic messages sent out, Clara found herself in a small cafe bustling with energy, merging thoughts with coffee. She had managed to secure a couple of conversations with fellow presenters, their eagerness palpable as they shared their experiences. The discussions flowed effortlessly, they exchanged ideas, opinions, and criticisms, while Clara fostered an inclusive space that encouraged honesty. Through their shared vulnerabilities, she felt their spirits lift, encouraging her to express her own deeper fears about acceptance and authenticity. Yet, Vin hovered like a specter at the edge of her consciousness, reminding her of the obstacles that remained. Their last interaction nagged at her. While she was invigorated by her ability to engage in meaningful dialogue, she could not dismiss the difficulty in executing the confrontational aspect of that dialogue. What if the next time, instead of curiosity, he faced her with disdain? As the day transformed into evening, Clara's apprehension crystallized into a plan. She would take active steps, preparing herself beyond basic presentations. She needed to fortify her positions and confront potential criticisms head-on. It wouldn't be enough to merely invite discussion, she needed to arm herself with responses. Vowing to practice confrontation through role-play scenarios with her peers, she felt a sense of agency re-emerge. This newfound conviction invigorated her weekends. She would draw from the slew of lessons learned, nurturing her skills until they blossomed into unshakable pillars of confidence. Reflecting on her progress helped stir not just motivation but also clarity. What identities had she been too afraid to embrace before? Facing Vin again loomed closer on the horizon, but for the first time, she would confront him not as an adversary, but rather as an opponent launching her toward growth. As Clara left the cafe, her heart surged with purpose. The possibilities unfurled before her, and she embraced the thrill of uncertainty. Approaching the next meeting with the vulnerable strength she had begun to cultivate would be her a game-changer, but through the exhilarating rush of determination, a question crept back in: would this transformation be enough to truly silence the voice of doubt that Vin had stirred? As night enveloped the city, she stared into the darkened sky, the myriad of stars forging connections amidst the chaos, each twinkling light representing a new narrative waiting to be discovered and shared. What had she been blind to in herself that could finally break the cycle? The air crackled with potential as Clara stepped onto the path of her evolving journey, resolute to discover the layers of strength within herself she had yet to unveil. Would she be embraced or further challenged in this revealing moment? Clara awoke the next morning with newfound determination coursing through her veins. As the sunlight streamed in, she felt buoyed by a blend of excitement and anxiety. Today was the day she would not just attend the meeting with Vin, she would confront him. The prior days were filled with reflection, gathering her thoughts, and rehearsing her responses. Each moment of preparation molded her sense of self. She was becoming a version of Clara who understood her worth and would stake her claim unapologetically. In front of her mirror, she adjusted her attire. The crispness of her blouse and the simplicity of her tailored pants made her feel professional yet approachable. "I have something to say," she told her reflection. There was a hint of validation in that assertion, as if the words themselves were small pyres igniting her inner fire. The urgency of her mission pushed her forward. It was time to quiet the storm inside her. Clara arrived early at the meeting space, the hum of conversation filling the air. She took her seat, her notebook and pen poised with purpose. Around her, peers exchanged pleasantries, but she remained focused, recalling the discussions she had over coffee. Each person she spoke to had left footprints of insight on her consciousness, their stories mingling with hers to create a tapestry of intertwined experiences. They too were afraid, vulnerable, and yet resolute. As the meeting began, she listened carefully to the presentations. Each speaker brought a unique narrative, their passions unspooling like ribbons across the room. Clara felt the weight of her own story incubating within her. She had something authentic to offer. It was now or never. When Vin finally took the floor, his authoritative presence commanded attention. He delivered his presentation with confidence, unyielding in his assertions. Clara noted his critiques and proposed ideas, mentally preparing her counters. There it was again, the flicker of challenge igniting in her stomach. Yet instead of shrinking back, she mentally fortified her stance. As the discussion turned to a place for feedback, the moment swelled with potential. Clara raised her hand, heart racing, as she called upon the words she etched into her mind during the past week. "Vin, I appreciate your perspective on this topic. However, I see value in embracing vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. The room quieted, eyes shifting between her and Vin, an electric tension hanging in the air. Clara pressed on, her voice steady though her heart pounded. We need to acknowledge that our combined experiences can redefine success. How do we move forward if we only engage with comfort and criticism? Vin's gaze bore into her, a slight twitch at the corner of his lip suggesting he didn't expect this confrontation. Clara, while vulnerability has its place, it can also expose us to unwanted risks. Do you really believe that will serve us here? The challenge was evident in that instant. Clara felt the tremors of fear but met them with a surge of resolve. What if those risks are precisely what allow us to innovate? What are we afraid of losing if we embrace our flaws? Vin hesitated, searching for his next response, while Clara's heart surged. She wasn't just speaking to him, she was addressing the insecurities that had plagued her for far too long. She caught a glimpse of other attendees shifting in their seats, expressions of intrigue and support mounting quietly. Perhaps, just perhaps, her voice could resonate beyond this exchange. As the discussion continued, Clara felt a cloistered power seeping from her newfound voice. Yet, as she returned to her notes, she sensed the boiling tension again. Had she truly shifted the dynamics, or had she merely ignited another round of pushback? As the meeting closed, Clara felt both exhilarated and drained, basking in a wave of newfound commitment. Still, the echo of Vin's skepticism lingered in her mind, urging her to push further into her narrative. What had she yet to unveil in herself, and could this moment be the catalyst for not just change, but a deeper understanding of her place in this world? Her resolve solidified further as she stepped out into the glow of the evening light, feeling the dense atmosphere around her. This path of change wasn't merely about contesting Vin, it was about confronting herself, the layers of fear, the need for validation, the quest for authenticity. As shadows lengthened, she felt an urgent push of reflection. When would her resolve be truly tested again, and would she rise to meet it? Clara couldn't shake the feeling that her ongoing journey was far from over. The question loomed, like a whisper in the wind: how would her newfound voice carry through the challenges ahead? Would her growth be met with acknowledgement, or was deeper confrontation lurking just beyond the horizon? Clara sat at her kitchen table, fingers tracing the outline of her notes, the weight of the upcoming panel pressing heavily on her shoulders. She had spent countless hours preparing, crafting her message of empowerment through education, and drawing from her life experiences. The echoes of laughter that once haunted her now transformed into a clarion call, urging her to seize this moment fully. She was tired of staying silent, tired of allowing the judgments of others to shape her identity. No longer could she let the businessman's derision rob her of her dignity or the courage she had fought to reclaim. The day arrived. Clara dressed purposefully, choosing a vibrant blouse that exuded confidence and warmth. Each piece of her outfit felt like armor, a protective shield against the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. Standing before the mirror, she declared to her reflection, "You are not invisible. Your voice matters." As she entered the venue among fellow presenters, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Clara took a deep breath, her heart racing, but she steadied herself with the knowledge that she had overcome far greater challenges. This was not just about her, this was about everyone who had felt overshadowed, overlooked, and underestimated. As she took the stage, she felt the familiar butterflies in her stomach. The crowd looked on, a mix of anticipation and skepticism etched across their faces, particularly one familiar visage. Vin sat front and center, his gaze piercing. His presence was daunting, a reminder of her battle, yet the fire within her rose to meet it. Clara began speaking, her voice clear and unwavering. Today, we explore the transformative power of education and the importance of vulnerability in reclaiming our narratives. For too long, voices have been silenced by ridicule, by the belief that age or experience diminishes worth. With each word, Clara felt the weight of her journey coalescing into purpose. Vin's expression remained unyielding, challenging. But how do we convince those who resist change? Many see vulnerability as a hindrance, not a strength, he interjected as she paused, the challenge palpable against the backdrop of her fervor. Clara met his gaze, the fire roaring inside her. By demonstrating our strength through our stories, she replied boldly. We have to be courageous enough to share our truths. Vulnerability allows raw connection, fosters empathy, and ultimately leads to authentic growth. The room buzzed with murmurs of acknowledgement. Her words resonated beyond her expectations. Your generation has had its narratives shaped by the past, he countered, but how can we appeal to the leaders of today, who often dismiss those experiences as outdated? With newfound confidence, Clara leaned forward, her voice resonating with certainty. Because we are not merely sharing stories, we are weaving legacies. Today's leaders must learn the power of intergenerational knowledge. It is not about age, it's about relevance and real experience. Vulnerability is a bridge, not a weakness, she asserted. Gasps of surprise rippled through the audience, and Vin's expression shifted, hints of acceptance rising in response to her conviction. It was in that moment, Clara realized, that her journey was not about winning validation from a critic like Vin. It was about embodying her truth and standing tall, unafraid to challenge ignorance head-on. As she concluded her presentation, she saw a nod of respect in Vin's typically steely demeanor. The applause that followed reverberated with genuine appreciation, a recognition of her growth, her voice, and her unwavering determination to rise up. Months later, Clara's blog, a chronicle of her journey, filled with workshops and interactive discussions, thrived, empowering countless individuals to reclaim their narratives. The importance of every voice echoed through her work, creating spaces for dialogue that resonated with honesty. On the final day of her first series, Clara stood before a room filled with eager participants, their stories entwining with her own. She had achieved what once felt insurmountable. She had transformed from a forgotten relic into a beacon of hope. Validation surged within her as she recognized the significance of her work. She was not just echoing words of empowerment, she was living it. In that moment, she realized that her journey was not only hers to navigate. It was a collective journey of many souls seeking to break their silence. She embraced the full breadth of her personal growth, her initial tremors of doubt completely replaced by resilient confidence and newfound purpose. Clara had conquered not just the external mocks, but the battles within herself. As she savored this moment, a challenge that once felt daunting now appeared like an open door leading to endless possibility. Clara Thompson was poised to redefine herself, emboldened by the responsibility she felt toward her communities, ensuring that every narrative was honored. This was her testament, a flourishing affirmation that age, experience, and the courage to share one's truth mattered profoundly and could ignite change far beyond what she could imagine. Now, it's your turn to recognize the power of your own story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so more incredible tales can reach those who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, let them experience the transformation. You need to support this journey of growth and empowerment.